Everybody, thank you for joining. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening for our candidate forum for Senate District 6, right? We're very pleased to have you joining us, and we're going to move things right along. I'm Ann Luther from the League of Women Voters Down East, and I thank you all for joining us. I thank the candidates for their interest in public service, for running for office, and for being willing to serve if elected. And I thank our moderator tonight, who is Chris Crockett. He is the publisher of both the Ellsworth American and the Mount Desert Islander, and both award-winning papers. And we're very happy to have Chris in charge of our forum tonight. We are recording this event, and the video recording will post to the League of Women Voters website probably before the evening is over. And we will also be live streaming on Facebook. People will be able to follow us on Facebook live stream, and that recording will also be available to people immediately after the event. So and also we're going to have audience questions. As the forum goes on, you may post your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom, at least it's showing up at the bottom of my stream. To post your questions there, and Chris will answer as many as we have time for. We're going to try to wrap up by 6:30 sharp, but we may adjourn earlier if we don't have enough questions to fill the hour. So with that, I'm going to reintroduce Chris. Again, Chris Crockett is the publisher of both the Mount Desert Islander and the Ellsworth American, both award-winning papers. And Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Ann. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this and many other candidate forums. And welcome, everybody. And thank you for joining us. As Ann said, my name is Chris Crockett. I'm the publisher for the Ellsworth American and Mount Desert Islander. With us tonight are the candidates for Senate District 6, which includes Amherst, Aurora, Eastbrook, Franklin, Gouldsboro, Great Pond, Hancock, Mariaville, Osborn, Sorrento, Sullivan, Waltham, Winter Harbor, and all of Washington County. That's a mouthful. On November's ballot is Marianne Moore, the Republican incumbent candidate from Calais, and Jonathan Goble, the Democrat candidate from Cherryfield. The candidates drew straws to determine the order tonight for the opening and closing statements. But first, let me introduce Jonathan Goble. Jonathan enlisted in the Army during the Vietnam. After graduate school, he worked as a coordinator of the Behavioral Health Assessment Service of a university health system in North Carolina and provided emergency assessments for Rural Mental Health Center. Before retiring, he was in private practice as a forensic psychologist working in childcare-related court cases. He continues to look for ways to serve his community to help preserve the strengths of our communities while we face the challenge of growing a 21st century economy for the benefit of all, and to make sure that we meet our obligations to veterans who have served to protect us. He believes strongly in freedom, fairness, and opportunity, and wants Maine to continue to embody these values. Next, we have Marianne Moore. Marianne currently resides in Calais and is in her third term as state senator and is seeking re-election for Maine Senate District 6. She previously served 9 years on the Calais City Council, 4 years as the mayor of Calais, and was the former owner and manager of the Curves Fitness Center in Calais. She also taught at Washington County Community College and previously worked for Healthy Acadia as one of Washington County cancer patient navigators. The rules for tonight are as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to give an opening statement and 2 minutes at the end of the night for a closing statement. The candidates will be asked 3 questions that they have received in advance of tonight's forum and given 3 minutes to answer. I'll switch between candidates as the questions are asked, giving each an opportunity to answer questions first. Audience members are invited to submit questions via the Q&A feature here on Zoom, and only questions submitted using that feature will be seen by me. Questions will be selected by me and may be reworded. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions submitted by our audience. We've also received questions via email from constituents ahead of tonight's forum. Some questions submitted might be directed at a single candidate, but both will have an opportunity to respond. With all of that said, let's get started. And first up is Jonathan, your opening remarks.
Well, hello, everybody. Hello to Marianne, who I have run against previously, and somebody who I enjoy running against because it feels like a campaign the way politics should be, with respect, understanding, etc. I grew up spending much of my time in Steuben, ultimately moving away and bounced around much of the world. But the groundwork that I learned in Maine involved the importance of hard work, initiative. It also involved the fact that neighbors help each other and care about each other. The importance of community, I believe, cannot be understated. Mentioned in the introduction were three values I hold very dearly. Freedom, fairness, opportunity. And I want to add two words to each of those, and that's freedom for all, fairness for all, and opportunity for all. And without that, we don't have a community. We have deep divisions. And with those divisions, we can't build the kind of future we want. And even though my time isn't up, I'm done.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Marianne, your opening remarks.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jonathan, for your kind words as well. And I enjoyed hearing from you. I wanted to take this opportunity to say a few words about me and my candidacy, just to give some folks a little bit of a background. As you know, my name is Marianne Moore, and I am currently in my third term as a state senator and seeking the re-election. But a little bit about myself. I was actually born in Anchorage, Alaska, where my mother was in the Army and my dad was in the Air Force. As an Air Force brat, my dad's military assignments gave me the opportunity to live in Japan for 3 years, as well as numerous cities throughout the United States. As the eldest child of 4, I graduated from high school in San Antonio, Texas, as my family continued to their next tour of duty in New Jersey. After graduation, I went to work for the telephone company, where I had a very successful career that spanned over 31 years, holding numerous managerial positions both on the line and on staff throughout the state of Texas, retiring in November of 2000. In April of 2001, having visited all 50 states, I chose to live in Maine. So Dallas to Calais is my claim to fame. Since my arrival in Maine, I have been very active in the community, serving on a variety of civic and community organizations representing Washington County throughout the state. As mentioned in my bio, I previously served 9 years on the Calais City Council, 4 years as the mayor of Calais, and was the former owner-manager of the Curves Fitness Center in Calais. I also taught at the Washington County Community College and previously worked for Healthy Acadia as one of the Washington County cancer patient navigators, where I helped address the complex barriers to short and long-term care faced by cancer patients in Washington County. On a personal note, I'm proudly the mother of 2 grown daughters, 2 granddaughters, a grandson, a great-granddaughter, a great-grandson, all who live in Texas, and a cat named Gizmo. I have a Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences degree from Dallas Baptist University in Dallas, which took me 18 years to achieve as a working single mom. I then went on to complete my Master's of Business Administration from Southern Methodist University in Dallas as well. For fun, I've climbed to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. I climbed a base camp on Mount Everest in Nepal, and I've hiked the Inca Trail in Peru, besides several hikes to the summit of Mount Katahdin. I look forward to answering any questions you all might have for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And we'll start with you with our first question of the night. We faced some devastating storms last winter. What should the state of Maine do to mitigate and/or prepare for these effects in the future?
Thank you for the question. I think Maine can take several steps to mitigate and prepare for the effects of the devastating storm. I prepared a few comments about that. I do feel we need to upgrade our critical infrastructure, such as our roads, bridges, and public buildings, to withstand extreme weather. This should include elevating structures in flood-prone areas and using materials designed for storm resilience. We might consider creating grant programs or financial incentives for vulnerable communities to improve their resilience to storms and natural disasters. We probably need to look closely at our zoning regulations as it relates to coastal development, making sure we are preserving our natural barriers like wetlands and dunes that can absorb storm impacts. We need to enhance weather forecasting and early warning systems to provide timely information to residents about impending storms, allowing for better preparedness. We should continue our public awareness campaigns to educate residents about storm preparedness, including how to create emergency kits and evacuation plans. Finally, I think we should use the December and January storms experience to develop and update emergency response plans at the community level, including evacuation routes and shelter locations. Regular drills can help ensure that readiness. We should also provide our local emergency responders with any additional training they may need for disaster management and recovery to ensure our communities can quickly and effectively respond to storms. I think by implementing these strategies, we would be better prepared for any of the future storms to protect both our residents and our natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Same question for you, Jonathan. We faced some devastating storms last winter. What should the state of Maine do to mitigate and/or prepare for these effects in the future?
Oh, I was waiting for the square to turn green. I guess I have to start talking for that to happen. Most of what Marianne said, I think, are certainly measures that need to be taken. I think we need to do more, though. First, we need to recognize that it's only going to get worse, particularly for us this far north. It's likely to be the winter storms that we get the brunt of. No guarantee that a hurricane won't come wandering all the way to us, but at least so far that hasn't been happening. But in the winter storms, it becomes absolutely critical that people maintain electricity, because without electricity, heat for most of our residents will stop. So that we need to make sure that our power grid is intact, is strong, that the power companies respond when told that a line's in jeopardy because a branch is coming close to a wire, instead of waiting for that branch to come down in a storm, knocking out power for half a town. It's also important when we have severe storms that we engage in the rebuilding process in a way that doesn't just rebuild what was there, but that we go ahead and engineer new structures to be stronger, to be able to handle, for coastal ones, rising sea levels, and of course, the worsening damage from the wave action. It all takes money. And lest I be accused of just wanting to tax and spend, in the process, if we do it right, we will get full value for our money and save money in the long run.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'll stick with you for the start of our next question. From nursing home closures to shrinking hospital and clinical services, Maine seems to be facing a crisis in rural healthcare. How should the legislature address this vital issue?
First, I want to note that part of the problem in answering that question is that it is a problem for Maine. It is a national problem, and it tangles with that. But in fact, it's worse in Maine than it is elsewhere. We have a higher rate of nursing home closures. All of our hospitals have been in trouble with their credit ratings getting downgraded. And without adequate health care services, it can be a death knell for a community, particularly for our small towns. On the nursing home front, we probably will need to change models. As the head of the nursing home in Presque Isle said when they had to close it, that no businessman in their right mind would invest in a nursing home because you can't make a profit now. In that case, it seems that the model probably needs to shift to a nonprofit model. It likely will take state grants to do that. However, of course, the facilities are in many cases there, but probably in need of investment to upgrade them and so on. Furthermore, we need to make sure for our older folks that there's a full continuum of care available, all the way from assisted living, well, senior communities in general, and all the way to skilled nursing. We also, for the hospitals and physicians, need to make sure that the reimbursement rates, particularly for us out of the public insurance, Medicare, Medicare, because the legislatures at state and federal levels have some input, some more input there, are big enough to keep those healthcare facilities sustainable financially.
Thank you, Jonathan. Same question to you, Marianne. From nursing home closures to shrinking hospital and clinical services, Maine seems to be facing a crisis in rural healthcare. How should the legislature address this vital issue?
Thank you, Chris. Addressing the rural healthcare crisis in Maine really does require a multifaceted approach. And here's some strategies I think we should consider. We should allocate more state funding, especially for our rural hospitals and clinics, to help maintain and expand the services. This could include grants or subsidies to support the operational costs. We should encourage partnerships between hospitals and community health organizations to share resources and improve service delivery, such as our mobile clinics or shared staffing arrangements. We need to ensure that emergency medical services are adequately funded and available in rural areas, possibly through regional service agreements. We need to advocate for federal support and policy changes that benefit rural healthcare, including reimbursement models, as Jonathan was mentioning, that reflect the unique challenges of providing care in these areas. We need to invest in transportation initiatives that help residents access healthcare facilities, particularly for those without reliable transportation options. We should support the expansion of telehealth services to improve access to care, especially for those in remote areas. This could include funding for necessary technology and training for providers. We need to promote training programs for our healthcare workers in rural areas, including scholarships for nursing and medical students who commit to serving in these communities. We should consider creating the incentives for healthcare professionals to work in these rural areas, such as loan forgiveness programs, housing assistance, or competitive salaries. And finally, we should invest in community health programs that focus on prevention and wellness, helping to reduce the burden on hospitals and clinics. I think by taking a proactive and collaborative approach, we can ensure our rural communities, such as ours, will have access to healthcare services that we so desperately need.
Thank you, Marianne. And I'll stick with you for the next question, which is, what are the social and economic impacts of limited housing in your area? What role can the state legislature play in addressing them? Oh, and Marianne, you're muted.
See, there we go. All right. It's a good question. Limited housing in Washington and Hancock County does have significant social and economic impacts. Socially, statistics show the shortage of affordable housing can lead to higher rates of homelessness, putting pressure on social services and affecting our community stability. Residents may be forced to leave the area for better housing options, leading to a loss of community ties and a decline in local culture. Limited housing can also increase demand for emergency services, shelters, and food assistance programs, straining our local resources. Poor housing conditions can lead to negative health outcomes, including mental health issues due to instability and stress. Families may have to move frequently, disrupting our children's education and affecting overall community cohesion. Economically, a lack of affordable housing can deter potential workers from moving to the area, exacerbating our labor shortages in key industries. If residents leave due to housing issues, local businesses may suffer from reduced customer bases, leading to economic decline. Limited housing supply can drive up rental and home prices, making it difficult for residents to afford basic necessities. A housing crisis can lead to stagnation or decline in property values, impacting our local tax revenues and funding for community services. So what can we do in the state legislature? We need to allocate funds to develop affordable housing projects and support nonprofit housing organizations. We need to encourage municipalities to revise their zoning laws to allow for more diverse housing options, including multifamily units and accessory dwelling units. We could provide tax incentives or grants for developers to build affordable housing in underserved areas. We should also consider increasing funding for homeless prevention programs, shelters, and transitional housing to address immediate needs. We might consider offering grants for community development initiatives, promoting sustainable housing solutions and revitalization of our neighborhoods. We should also collaborate with local governments to identify special housing needs and implement targeted strategies. We should promote awareness about housing issues and available resources throughout our community outreach programs. And finally, I think we should develop a comprehensive statewide housing strategy that includes planning for future growth, preservation of existing affordable units, and sustainable development practices. I think if we could take some of these actions, that we would be able to address the housing crisis in Washington and Hancock County. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Same question to you, Jonathan. What are the social and economic impacts of limited housing in your area? What role can the state legislature play in addressing them?
Key in this, some of it is what Marianne pointed out, but let's just consider what happens if somebody moves into the area, for example, take a job at Down East Community Hospital and suddenly find that it is hard to find a house. And when they do, half their income goes to housing. And this is, in this area, not uncommon at all. It simply makes it very hard for all of the economy to work. It makes it difficult for people to lead lives where they're not simply on the edge of disaster, when a third to a half or more of the income is going to housing. Key to solving this is finding the ways to make capital available for building such housing or rehabilitating some of the old houses around, but at a risk level that makes it feasible for lenders and developers to take the risk. Plans such as Governor Mills' Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan are making such funding possible. That extra syllable can change the meaning. Eligible applicants for such grants include public housing authorities, community action agencies, and both nonprofit and for-profit housing developers. These grants enable acquisition and rehabilitation of rental housing units, adapting existing buildings for rental housing, such as unused schools and so on, and new construction of rental housing. For these grants, projects must be of the order of 5 to 18 units in size and leased to households having less than 80% of the area median income. Such a plan can serve as a model for solving most aspects of the affordable housing shortage. Given that this and similar plans are statewide, what is essential is to make sure that the money goes to all the parts of the state it needs to go, such as here in Washington and Eastern Hancock County.
Thank you, Jonathan. We'll move on to one of our audience submitted questions. Just a reminder, for these questions, you'll have 2 minutes to answer. The first one we have is, would you support any expansion of or reduction in access to reproductive health care, such as abortion?
Yes. I'll start with the quick one-word part of the answer. Right now, Maine has as expansive a right to abortion, I think, as is anywhere in the States. But reproductive health care is more than just abortion. And as with every specialty care, in rural Maine, in Washington County, in Eastern Hancock, specialist care is not conveniently found. We have to travel. And anything we can do to bring specialist care into our region, it just needs to be done. And especially true on reproductive health care, because in many cases, that's where women get the key screenings that are simply essential for life.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Marianne, the same question for you. Would you support any expansion of or reduction in access to reproductive health care, such as abortion?
Thank you, and I appreciate the question. I know that that's been a strong conversation that's been going on at the State House and then also throughout the state itself. I agree with Jonathan. I think access to reproductive health care is very, very important, and it's way beyond the topic of whether or not you approve abortions or not approve abortions. I know that was a conversation we had when we were looking at the changes that were made to the abortion bill itself or the abortion rights themselves. But I think reproductive health care is very, very important. As Jonathan mentioned, that is usually that is the only point or the touch point our physicians have with any of our women and their health care, whether it be for their annual exams, whether it be for any of their health modes. That may be the only time we ever get to see them. So I think it is very important that we make sure that it is available. I think that more than anything. I know that it's important. There was some conversation about actually making that an amendment to the main Constitution. I am not in support of that. I think that takes it beyond where we want it to be, where we need it to be. I think it needs to continue to stay in our state, not as a constitutional amendment, but something that we continue to talk about and make sure that it is front and center, that all of our women are taken care of.
Thank you, Marianne. And I'll stick with you for our next question, which is what role can or should the legislators have in addressing federal I got a little tongue-tied there, addressing federal regulations addressing the fishing industry or regarding the fishing industry? Phew, that was a tough one.
I'm not even going to ask you to repeat that, Chris. I think it's very, very important. We need to continue to make sure that our voices are heard, not only in Augusta, but definitely heard in DC, in Congress, and continually let everyone know what they are doing to our fishing industry. Our fishermen, they do everything they have been asked. They change their equipment, they follow the policies, and every time we turn around, it's something else, it's something else. And so I think as legislators, we need to continue to be front and center, continue to complain, continue to write letters, continue to support it. And I feel confident that our representatives in Congress are very supportive of our fishing industry. And we want to make sure that that continues to get that message out and the word get out, that we have got to take care of our fishing industry because it is so important. It's vital to the economic success that we have here in Maine.
Thank you, Marianne. Same question for you, Jonathan. I'll try to repeat it. What role can or should the legislators have in addressing federal regulations regarding the fishing industry? I almost made it.
I was debating whether I was going to use the word regulation in answering it, and I think I'll skip it. I lived growing up right on the shore in Steuben. I woke up every morning well, not in the depths of winter when the boats were over in Korea, but it woke up to the sounds of the boats going out fishing. It's part of our legacy. It's part of what Maine, our end of Maine, is about. And we need to find the ways where our fishing industry survives. I mean, it's Maine lobster, everybody, and it's just an essential part of our economy. We need to find the way that we can continue to have fishing go on in a sustainable fashion. Our fishermen have done everything, as mentioned, that's been asked of them to do that. And it's important that those regulations be based on the science of what's going on. Sustainability can be quantified We can develop the ways to know what's damaging the whales, why our herring aren't reproducing fast enough, etc., and then find the ways of making sure that it is possible to continue a fishery that's existed for a long time.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I'll stick with you for the next question, which is, what could the state of Maine government be doing better, and what is it doing well?
Oh, nothing like an open-ended question. It's trying to narrow that down in my head. I'll start with what it's doing well, which is that state government seems to be doing a wonderful job at working towards having opportunity for all people, to treat people fairly, and to preserve the basic freedoms that we have. Of course, it's a process. So what it's not doing well is anywhere that we fall short of that, any ways that the development of a modern economy falls short needs to be improved upon. That includes some of the things about how fast the infrastructure gets built out and so on. We also are seeing within our society divisions that perhaps state government can take the lead on cutting through that and helping people realize we're all in it together. Now, that's a big ask of government to affect a cultural change. And I don't think government can do it all, but it can lead.
Thank you, Jonathan. Same question to you, Marianne. What could the state government be doing better, and what is it doing well?
Thank you, Chris. That's a good question to ask and a tough one to answer sometimes. I'm going to, like Jonathan did, I'm going to start out. I always try to be positive, so I'm going to start out on what we're doing well. I think we are doing a very good job of promoting the state of Maine and all of our important assets that we have, whether it be our woods and our forests and our water and our fishing and our hunting. I think we're doing a great job of getting the message out. I love it when I see, 3 cruise ships within a 3-day period coming into Eastport, Maine, of all places. And they're coming and we're showing them what beauty we have in our little neck of the woods. And I think we're doing a great job of getting that message out and getting more and more people wanting to be here, wanting to move here, and wanting to make this their home. What we could do better, I think, is actually what a lot of what Jonathan was talking about is we're looking at our taxes. We're one of the highest our property tax rates are high. People can't always afford to be here. So I think we as a state need to work a little bit better at looking at how we're taxing. Look at our pocketbook issues. I guess that's how I always try to talk about it. That's what our taxes. It's our how much it's costing for us to even go to the grocery store. How much are we paying for eggs now that versus what we had paid before. So I think we could do better in that regard. I think we could do better in some of the like I said, with our taxes, to make sure that we are doing a fair amount and trying to help our people be able to survive, our citizens here in the state of Maine.
Thank you, Marianne. And I'll stick with you for what is going to be our last question of the night, I believe. And it is there a particular piece of legislation that you would like to advocate for or be involved in?
I have a whole folder going, Chris, for that respect. There's a whole bunch of it. I think one of the things right now that has been front and center that I continue to hear repeatedly is the amount of land that is being taken off of our tax rolls. So there's a lot of concern about that. Some of my smaller towns, Lubec, I know Addison is another one, Cherryfield as well, and Jonathan's area too. And so I think what I'm wanting to do is look at maybe putting, at one point in time, there was a cap on how much could be put into conservation land. And I think it would be, and it was lifted, the cap was lifted. So we're looking at, or I'm looking at, placing another cap for a percentage of the land that is in Washington County, is 50% perhaps. I mean, I haven't really come up with a magic number, but only 50% of it can be placed into conservation land, because we still need to have our towns need to be able to survive. And the only way they can survive is on property taxes, and then also any revenue sharing. So I think that's one of the bills that I'm looking at. Besides other important bills such as the Sunrise Trail expansion, trying to finally get the trail finished into the Washington County area. I've been working on that the entire time I've been elected as a senator, and I'm hoping to at least get that going before my tenure is up, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. And Jonathan, same question. Is there a particular piece of legislation that you would like to advocate for or be involved in?
Boy, Marianne's got an edge on me on that one just from her time in the legislature and knowing exactly what there is in her folder. I will want to respond with a suggestion to Marianne, which is that rather than cap the amount of land that's in conservation, where that's the status, so that it's free of property tax, that you make sure that the land really is conservation lands. Not all of that land that's set aside is. And I don't know whether that would make up enough of what you're saying, but that would be how I'd want to start the process. A bill near and dear to my heart is, I think it's about time we settle the sovereignty issues concerning the Wabanaki. The indigenous peoples in 49 states are recognized as sovereign nations, their own territory. There's enough precedent in the law about how to do that. I think it's just flat time for Maine to join the rest of the country.
Thank you, Jonathan.
That's good, Jonathan. Thank you for bringing that up. You're absolutely correct.
And that's just about all the time we have for tonight. So I'm going to ask each candidate to deliver their 2-minute closing statement. And Jonathan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I did draw, I forget whether it was the long straw or the short straw for this one, but I did get to go first. Basically, what I want to simply say at this point is that this is a crucial election. It's an election that we absolutely need to have go smoothly, with respect, with dignity, and with safety. And I have tremendous faith in our town clerks to pull that one off, as long as the people let it happen. So I ask of everybody that they vote. By the way, I'd like them to vote for me, but I ask that everybody listening, go ahead, go vote, greet your neighbors at the polls with respect and friendliness. And on that, again, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, Marianne, now your closing statement.
Thank you so much. And Jonathan, you bring up such a valid point. This is such an important election. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and all the sponsors of the event itself. I just want to say, as your state senator, I've drawn on my experience as a small business owner, a corporate management specialist, a hospital trustee, and a former city councilor and mayor to protect your interests. I've made it my priority to actively represent the people in Senate District 6. In Augusta, as a member of the Health and Human Services Committee, I worked closely with the Department of Health and Human Services to make critical changes to the child welfare system, and there's more to be made. And also, we made some important changes to the General Assistance Program. I supported increased funding for the veterans' homes, our assisted living facilities, nursing homes, our ambulance services, and our direct care workers throughout the state. I want to continue to be your voice in Augusta. So with your support, I will continue to fight for common sense priorities such as small businesses and the jobs they create, our roads, our broadband expansion, education, working to improve our child welfare system, our substance use crisis, protecting our elderly, preserving our fishing industry, and ensuring that rural areas such as ours continue to have access to quality health care. So I ask for your vote on November the 5th, and I encourage you to get out there and vote. This is one of our most important rights that we have as citizens of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne, and I'll toss it back to you, Anne.
Well, thank you all so much for doing this tonight. Thank you, Chris, for your excellent job moderating. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Marianne, for your willingness to run and serve. You both did a great job expressing yourselves this evening, and I thank you so much for participating tonight. To our listeners, again, the Facebook live stream will be online immediately following the event, and we will also have this posted at the League's website, lwvme.org. Before the end of the evening, where people can watch it after the fact. If you haven't voted yet, you still have time to learn more about these candidates, and we appreciate all that you've done to do this public service this evening. Thank you all so much. I think we're done. Bye now.
Bye now.